Every week for over a century, young men and women have stepped off trains and buses at a nondescript station north of Chicago, carrying little more than a suitcase and uncertainty. Within hours, their civilian clothes are gone, their hair is cut, and they're marching in formation wearing Navy uniforms. Over the next 8 to 12 weeks, they'll be transformed from teenagers who've never left their hometowns into sailors ready to serve on aircraft carriers, submarines, and destroyers anywhere in the world. This is the Great Lakes Naval Training Station, the Navy's only boot camp. And for over 100 years, it has been the place where America's sailors are born. This is the story of how the Navy turns civilians into warriors, and why this single base on the shores of Lake Michigan has trained more sailors than any facility in history. In this video, you'll discover how Great Lakes Naval Training Station was born, the evolution of Navy boot camp training over the decades, what recruits actually experienced during their transformation, the historic moments that shaped the base, and why this location remains the Navy's premier training facility. Using archival records, recruit testimonies, and rarely seen historical footage, we're taking you inside America's sailor factory. To understand Great Lakes Naval Training Station, we need to go back to 1911. The United States Navy was expanding rapidly, modernizing from a force of wooden sailing ships to steel battleships powered by steam turbines and oil. This technological revolution required more sailors, and those sailors needed more sophisticated training. The Navy had been using various ships and small facilities for recruit training, but nothing centralized or large enough for the growing fleet. They needed a dedicated boot camp, and they needed it somewhere accessible from across the country. The Navy selected a site in North Chicago, Illinois, on the western shore of Lake Michigan. The location was perfect. It was central, accessible by rail from every part of the country. Lake Michigan provided water for training and simulating ocean conditions. The climate, while harsh in winter, would toughen recruits, and the land was available and affordable. In 1911, construction began on what would become the largest naval training station in the world. Great Lakes Naval Training Station officially opened on July 1, 1911. The first group of recruits, just over 1,000 men, arrived to find a facility still under construction. Early conditions were primitive. Recruits lived in temporary wooden barracks. Training equipment was limited, but the mission was clear: transform civilians into sailors in the shortest time possible while instilling Navy discipline, values, and skills. Those first recruits underwent 8 weeks of basic training that included seamanship, signaling, rowing, infantry drill, and weapons training. The curriculum seems basic by modern standards, but it established patterns that persist today. World War I brought explosive growth to Great Lakes. As America entered the war in 1917, the Navy needed tens of thousands of sailors immediately. Great Lakes expanded rapidly, adding barracks, training facilities, and support buildings. At its peak during World War I, Great Lakes housed over 100,000 recruits and staff simultaneously, making it one of the largest military installations in the United States. The training cycle shortened to cope with demand, and recruits were rushed through abbreviated programs before being sent to ships heading for the war zone. The interwar years saw Great Lakes contract and professionalize. With fewer recruits, the Navy could focus on quality over quantity. Training programs lengthened and became more sophisticated. Great Lakes developed specialized schools for different Navy ratings, teaching everything from radio operation to engine mechanics. The base became not just a boot camp, but a comprehensive training center where sailors could learn technical skills needed for an increasingly complex Navy. World War II brought even greater expansion. Between 1941 and 1945, Great Lakes trained nearly 1 million sailors, an extraordinary number that has never been matched. The base sprawled across thousands of acres, with hundreds of barracks, dozens of training facilities, and its own infrastructure, including hospitals, fire stations, and even a dedicated power plant. Recruits arrived constantly, processed through an assembly line fashion. Training was intense and compressed. The Navy needed bodies on ships immediately, and Great Lakes delivered. What did World War II-era training look like? Recruits arrived and were immediately stripped of their civilian identity. Hair was cut to uniform length. Civilian clothes were shipped home or stored. Navy uniforms were issued. Recruits were assigned to companies of about 80 men who would train together. The first days were disorienting by design. Constant yelling, strict discipline, endless formations, and physical training that left recruits exhausted. The purpose was breaking down civilian habits and building sailors who could function under stress. Training included physical conditioning, military drill, seamanship basics, firefighting, damage control, swimming, and weapons familiarization. Recruits learned Navy terminology, ranks, customs, and courtesies. They studied ship recognition, both American and enemy vessels. They practiced signaling with flags and lights. They learned basic navigation. And crucially, they trained together as units.
building the camaraderie and teamwork essential for life aboard ship. Great Lakes also trained women during World War II. The WWII, women accepted for volunteer emergency service, underwent boot camp at Great Lakes starting in 1942. Their training was similar to men's, but adapted for the roles women would fill in the Navy, primarily shore-based positions that freed men for sea duty. The presence of women at Great Lakes was initially controversial, but quickly proved successful. Women recruits demonstrated they could meet Navy standards, and their service was essential to the war effort. After World War II, Great Lakes continued as the Navy's primary training center, but other boot camps also operated. For decades, the Navy ran recruit training at multiple locations, including San Diego and Orlando. But in 1999, the Navy consolidated all recruit training at Great Lakes, making it the only boot camp for the entire Navy. This consolidation allowed the Navy to standardize training, reduce costs, and focus resources on a single world-class facility. Modern boot camp at Great Lakes lasts 8 weeks and is far more sophisticated than the World War I version. Recruits still experience the shock of arrival, the stripping away of civilian identity, and the constant physical and mental challenges. But today's training incorporates lessons learned over a century. The curriculum balances physical conditioning with classroom education. Recruits learn not just seamanship, but information technology, cybersecurity awareness, and modern naval warfare concepts. Physical training at Great Lakes is rigorous, but scientifically designed. Recruits participate in daily PT sessions that build strength, endurance, and agility. They must pass fitness tests that include running, push-ups, and sit-ups. Swimming is mandatory. Every recruit must demonstrate they can swim, tread water, and perform basic water survival skills. This isn't optional. If you can't pass the swim test, you don't graduate boot camp. One of the most challenging and important evolutions at Great Lakes is the confidence course, a series of physical and mental challenges designed to push recruits beyond what they think they can do. Recruits navigate obstacle courses, climb towers, and work through scenarios that simulate shipboard emergencies. The purpose isn't just physical conditioning, it's building confidence and proving to recruits they're capable of more than they imagined. Firefighting training is another crucial component. Recruits enter a compartment that's actually on fire and must work as a team to extinguish it while dealing with smoke, heat, and the disorientation of a real emergency. This training is as close to combat as most recruits will experience during boot camp, and it's terrifying and exhilarating. Recruits who successfully fight fires as a team graduate knowing
they can handle crises under pressure. The cultural and psychological aspects of boot camp are as important as the physical training. Drill instructors, called Recruit Division Commanders or RDCs, are specifically trained to transform civilians into sailors. They're tough, demanding, and seemingly omnipresent. They yell constantly during the first weeks, correcting every mistake, accepting no excuses. But as boot camp progresses, the relationship changes. RDCs begin teaching rather than just correcting. They push recruits to excel and show pride when their recruits succeed. By graduation, many recruits view their RDCs with respect bordering on affection, recognizing that the harsh treatment was necessary preparation for the fleet. Great Lakes has witnessed and reflected broader changes in American society. During World War I, the base was segregated with separate facilities for black sailors who were restricted to certain ratings. World War II continued this segregation. It wasn't until President Truman ordered the integration of the military in 1948 that Great Lakes began training all sailors together regardless of race. This change was initially resisted but ultimately proved successful, making the Navy a pioneer in American integration. The role of women in the Navy has also evolved at Great Lakes. After World War II, women's participation decreased, then expanded again in the 1970s. Today, women make up approximately 20% of Navy recruits, and they undergo the exact same training as men. They live in the same barracks areas, participate in the same physical training, and are held to the same standards. The modern Navy is gender integrated, and Great Lakes reflects that reality. Great Lakes has also adapted to America's changing demographics. The Navy recruits from every state, every background, and every ethnicity. Boot camp brings together people who would never otherwise meet. Farm kids from Iowa training alongside city kids from New York, suburban teenagers from California marching next to small-town recruits from Alabama. This diversity is a strength. Recruits learn to work with people different from themselves, a crucial skill for serving on ships with crews drawn from across America. The base itself is a small city. It has housing for thousands of recruits and staff, dining facilities that serve tens of thousands of meals daily, medical and dental clinics, recreation facilities, and administrative buildings.
The Great Lakes Complex includes not just boot camp, but also specialized training schools where sailors learn specific ratings after graduating recruit training. A sailor might spend months at Great Lakes, first completing boot camp, then learning to be an electronics technician, hospital corpsman, or any of dozens of other specialties. One of the most moving moments at Great Lakes is graduation. Every Friday, a new group of recruits completes boot camp and becomes sailors. Family members travel from across the country to attend. The ceremony is formal and emotional. Recruits who arrived weeks earlier looking uncertain and awkward now march in perfect formation, wearing their dress uniforms with pride. They've been transformed, and everyone can see it. Parents often cry watching their children march past, recognizing the change that's occurred. After graduation, new sailors receive their first assignments. Some go to specialized schools at Great Lakes or other bases. Others report directly to ships. All carry with them the lessons and experiences of boot camp. The physical conditioning, the discipline, the teamwork, and the confidence that they can handle whatever the Navy throws at them. Great Lakes gave them that foundation. The impact of Great Lakes on American naval history cannot be overstated. Over its 110-plus-year history, the base has trained millions of sailors. Every naval victory, every successful deployment, every mission accomplished, it all traces back in part to the training sailors received at Great Lakes. The base has adapted to changing technology, evolving warfare, and shifting social norms, but its core mission remains unchanged: transform civilians into sailors capable of defending the nation at sea. Great Lakes also impacts the surrounding communities. The base is a major employer and economic engine for the region. Local businesses cater to sailors and their families. The relationship between the Navy and nearby towns is generally positive, built on decades of mutual benefit and respect. Great Lakes isn't just a military base, it's woven into the fabric of the region. Looking to the future, Great Lakes continues evolving. Modern recruits learn cybersecurity and information warfare alongside traditional seamanship. Training incorporates virtual reality and simulation technology. Physical fitness standards are regularly updated based on the latest sports science, but the fundamentals remain: discipline, teamwork, physical conditioning, and the transformation from civilian to sailor. These core elements have defined Great Lakes for over a century and will continue to define it for decades to come. The story of Great Lakes Naval Training Station is ultimately the story of American sailors and the nation they serve. It's about young people who volunteer to defend their country, about the sacrifices they make, and about the transformation they undergo. Every sailor in the fleet today is a graduate of Great Lakes. Every admiral commanding a carrier strike group once stood in formation as a nervous recruit at this base on Lake Michigan. Great Lakes is where Navy careers begin, where sailors are born, and where for over 100 years, civilians have become the defenders of America's maritime power.